about how matter goes from a solid to a gas. One very well-known example of this is how ice can go from water to water vapor. The ice first begins off as a solid, which is where the particles are very compacted closely in a particular order. As the ice will begin to melt, the particles will begin to loosen and it will turn into a liquid. And an example of this liquid is water. Yes?
I thought that in water, the particles are still close together.
That's a great question, Regina. The particles are still close together, but when it turns into a liquid, the particles will begin to loosen. Now to after it turns into a liquid. If you were to boil some water or leave it out in a hot sun, the water will then turn into water vapor, which is also known as a gas. And you will realize that the water has now turned into a gas, which is where the particles are not completely loosened. They are still together. They have no particular shape or volume. If you were to put some gas in a container, the particles of the gas would fit to the container. Yes, Martia.
What would happen if a gas turns into a solid?
If the gas would turn into a solid, Martia, the particles would just simply come back together. Anybody have any examples that they know of where ice can turn into a liquid or water vapor, or any examples of a solid, liquid, or gas? Yes, Regina.
Well, one thing that I thought of was that when you melt the ice and it turns into water, if you were to refreeze it, the particles would come back together and they wouldn't be as loose as they were before.
Was that a question?
No.
Oh, that's a great example, Regina. How about you, Martia?
Well, one example that I thought of was if you eat ice cream and it melts, the ice cream comes from a solid and turns into a liquid.
I have a question for you guys. Is it true that gas is still a fluid? And if so, why? Yes, Regina.
Technically, gas is still a fluid. Like, for example, the gas you put in your car. So, like, it's still a fluid until it's burned and it turns into the vapor that makes it gas.
Great answer, Regina. Now, students, our last activity of the day, we will be going around the room finding liquids, solids, and gas.
This is a solid.
Martia, what makes that glass a solid?
This is a solid because the particles of a solid is packed together and it doesn't hold into a container and take its shape. And it doesn't, yeah.
Great example, Martia.
Interesting factoid. This air that we're breathing now is a gas. This is a gas because the particles are very, very loose. They're just moving around all around us.
Great answer, Alonzo.
This water that we drink is also a liquid. You can use it to wash your dishes. You can use it for anything. And you can even use it for playing during the summer. This is a liquid because it can take the shape of any object you pour it into. And the particles are very loose, allowing them to flow freely as you pour it.
Great job, Regina. Mr. Perry, do you have an example of a solid?
Well, students, yes, I do. Exhibit 1, my computer. How do you like it?
It was great.
You can pour something in it, right? Gigi, catch.
Oh wait, what's inside of it is what you pour in. It's a liquid. Oh, and if you put it in a pot, it can boil into a gas.
All 3 states of matter can come out of this one bottle. That's awesome.